very good morning to you all. I'm Gayatri. I welcome Professor Jain Kandhari on behalf of the Bombay Technologists, Institute of Chemical Technology Student Run Science Journal. We are honored to have you here today, sir, and it gives me great pleasure to be endowed with the task of engaging in a surely insightful conversation with you. Dr. Professor Jayan Kandhare is the MD and Chief Scientific Officer of Pune-based R&D company Actorius Innovation and Research Private Limited (AIR), and also a respected professor of pharmacy at the Research Cell of MIT WPU, Pune. After completing his bachelor's and master's in pharmacy, he received a PhD in polymer chemistry from NCL, Pune, and went on to do two postdoctoral tenures in the USA. He was awarded the prestigious Alexander von Humboldt Experienced Researcher Fellowship in 2011 for his contribution in the field of macromolecular chemistry and worked for a year at the Freie University Berlin for the same. As a senior research scientist and founder of the polymer chemistry group at Piramal Healthcare, he contributed greatly to the development of the organization. A prolific research fellow, Kandhare sir has a whooping number of 45 research papers to his name and a remarkable total of 14 US filed patents. His areas of interest include cancer biology, chemical engineering, polymer chemistry, macromolecular chemistry, targeted drug delivery systems, cellular imaging, 3D cancer cell scaffolds, and nanoparticles. His brainchild, Actorius, has come up with the OncoDiscover liquid biopsy technology, the second of its kind in the world and the very first in India. It was the first non-predicative device to receive license for manufacture under the new medical device rules MDR 2017. This novel technology aims at combating metastasis and secondary tumor growth of epithelial origin cancers at an earlier stage. Apart from this, Actorius strives for formulating pharmaceutically crucial drug delivery and GI imaging systems. Sir has also worked with several organizations to provide impetus to the field of scientific research. There is a lot that we want to know from you, sir, about your scientific journey. Without further ado, let us begin. What was the motivating factor behind establishing the polymer chemistry group and behind establishing AIR?
First of all, thank you to Bombay Technologist and Gayatri here and Rushad and your professor faculty who has actually considered me to be part of your this Bombay Technologist journal. So it's a pleasure, privilege, and honor to be here today. And the spirit of post-pandemic, situation is now becoming better. So thank you very much to all ICT faculty and fraternity and stakeholders and the group of young students like Gayatri and Rushad for bringing me here. And you suggested me to speak about a group that was formed in a drug discovery company called as a Polymer Innovation, Polymer Technology, because we were aspiring as a company to discover new drugs, new chemical entities, and the at the forefront, the organization and the company were investing a lot of funds and lot of investment and lot of time in bringing best of the scientific temperaments, minds from all over the world, including majorly from the US. So I was very fortunate to be under the radar and invite when I was at the US, and that changed actually complete possibility of returning to India. If they didn't had called, maybe I would not have come back to India, because it's an opportunity that drives you and your research fate. So before answering very deeply why the polymer chemistry group was evolved, it always a research institute or an organization looks for the capable people, and once you identify them, you leave it to them what they want to do it. So therefore, probably they looked at my CV as a polymer expertise in medicine and therapeutics, and therefore they invited me to join first as a drug discovery formulation expertise or a scientist, and later on in a second tenure post my Berlin Humboldt tenureship, they invited me back, but I didn't wanted to do the same role at what actually I had begin my first tenure, and in second tenure, the polymeric innovations worldwide, especially in the biomedical components and area, are largely driven with the charges. You look at delivery of drugs, you look at the liposomes, you look at the targeted delivery system, you look at implants, you look at most of the components which we understand as in for the particular needs and essence of polymer science. ICT is great, has produced a polymer department. So the company wanted someone to interface drug discovery and innovation. So that was the intention of my advisor and boss, Dr. Sob Sharma, who was our chief scientific officer. And the degree of freedom to run innovation in polymer chemistry was all set. So that was an intention of discovery as well as innovation, and I was part of it. That was an objective, key objective.
Thank you, sir. You are an epitome of the confluence of academia and industry both, having worked in both. Which one do you prefer over the other, and why? For what reason?
Questions are designed very smartly, and I must appreciate
Thank
for
you.
the second question. Then the first question is, it's a wheel that, say for example, yesterday I was speaking to new interns, two of the interns, one coming from US and one with a physics background, one with a medical background, and the third one was from the MTech background or biotech MTech bio. So I told them that when Newton had this observation of gravitational pull and force and fall, during those times there was fundamentally not understanding about the fundamental laws as well as the applied laws. So at any given time point, researchers, whether it is a fundamental research or applied research, do not see what is going to be an outcome of his or her research. But eventually, since last, say, 400 centuries, about, say, 400 centuries, the advancement in research has been documented well. So they built the fundamental science, actually. So as an academician, it's always wonderful, inspiring to be as an academician. And once you practice this for, say, a decade or 20 years or 40 years, as many researchers at UDCT has done or ICT has done, the ratio of translating academic research could be, few percent, few low percent. So there could be a single digit. So if you have 100 papers, you might find or stumbled on one technology, one innovation. And that's great, great research. But you cannot have an incremental technology built without understanding the fundamental sciences. It helps for an innovator to have a fundamental background to enrich, build, overcome, investigate, propagate, design better innovations. I think the fundamental sciences is a catalyst to the innovation. So I would love both of them.
So it is like one helps the other. They are
Yes.
not apart. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. How has the chemical industry evolved over the years, and where is it headed now? Because you've worked in the industry for many years and you have seen a lot of drastic changes over the years, I'm sure. So where do you think it is headed now?
I might not be a right person to talk about the chemical industry in general, but if you ask, post independence, India could catch up, predominant basic needs of a society from the medical side, from the medicine. So we really have wonderful developmental programs in pharmaceutical sciences and later on chemical sciences. And it's like UDCT then and then ICT, and legacy that actually UDCT has built in processing of chemical and pharmaceutical technology, be that the products and the drugs that have been synthesized were far superior and far process driven. That brought actually the whole change in in not only in Indian chemical and pharmaceutical technologies. Yesterday, I was very happy to read that the Harvard School, in fact, has named chemistry department in the name of Dr. Hamid, that is Cipla's founder. So naming an big institute's chemistry department with a pioneer like for Cipla's pioneer, it's an incredible thing. So that speaks a lot from the chemical sciences that has you on. If your question is directed towards my understanding in pharmaceutical sciences and delivery systems, we have been able to provide prepared manufacture quality medicines at a very affordable and made accessible to highest and the lowest strata of the society. So it's an incredible journey so far. What is a gap there, Gayatri? It seems the gap is we are still secondary supporters to the innovations. We are not primarily driven by the innovations. So that is what is a lacunae currently. I foresee heading towards chemicals engineering. So innovations in chemical engineering processes, definitely we stand very epitome. Pharmaceutical development, we are the world's second largest pharmaceutical exports worldwide, right? However,
Yes.
feathers about innovations in both chemical as well as
Pharmaceutical.
pharmaceutical are not enough. They are not enough towards our other credits. So I think we are going to do better through the young innovators that I see here on the board.
Yeah, we have a lot of scope for development. We are the second largest pharmaceutical industry in the world, but we still lack a bit in technology or in manpower, space for work, and I think there is still a lot to go, and we will surely try to improve that as much as we can.
Yes.
Could you tell us about the MOA, mechanism of action of OncoDiscover, and how it stands out from the other tests that determine metastasis due to CTC, circulating tumor cells?
So
Because
good. So
that
so
is a brilliant technology that you have come up with.
good. I'm very comfortable in answering this question because it stands in my line. All of us know that cancer incidences are on rise, right? So if you read 2018's global cancer data published by Lancet, very clearly defined the incidences of cancer in 2018 were about 18 plus million people were incident for the cancer. And the mortality in 2018 was about 9.5 million people. And the predictions are very, very fearful in another decade. The incidences and the deaths would be more than 30 million people. In spite of great research in cancer, predominant focus from US and European researchers, and a lot of money has been spent by the pharmaceutical companies in discovering new drugs. But remember, in cancer incidences rise, the primary reason is actually increase in geriatric population, because the survival, research finally leads to healthy life. And when you live and define healthiness, you are going to survive for a longer time. So earlier, the average survival for the Indians was, say, 45 years, then moved to 50. Now we are probably closing to 65 or so. So as human body evolves and it gets slowly, mature and deteriorated, there are going to be genetic mutations that are going to cause, and therefore the incidences are going to stand tall as long as the population will be increased and the geriatric population predominantly will roll. So we know that the detection in cancer is very, very important for the right treatment. So early detection is a key in increasing the overall survival of a patient. Yesterday I was having a meeting with Dr. Pankaj Chaturvedi, who is a deputy director of Tata Memorial Hospital. And remember, India caters head and neck as an primary highest incidences actually come from head and neck cancer, and this is India's cancer. While we focus also for the females in say, breast cancer and uterine cancers, and then males actually lung cancer. So there are the incidences in the list in increasing order of the numbers. However, the detection in our country is very poor in the state, because most 90% of the patients from cancer actually die because of a metastatic, that's a spread of a cancer. Unfortunately, the metastatic spread cannot be detected earlier because of the intricacies in detections. So therefore, how we actually stratify the confirmatory of a cancer is by solid tissue biopsies. So that leads towards staging of a cancer patient, that leads to decision making of a treatment, and that leads to radiation as well as the chemotherapy cycles. So this is what is a solid tissue biopsy. It defines the staging, which is very conventional and now very rudimental, and it is going to actually evolve. So if you have heard about a word called as a liquid biopsy, so what does the liquid biopsy say? That non-invasively, without taking a tissue, which is kind of a surgery, and not many solid tissue organs offers multiple biopsies. In fact, you damage the better half or better part of the organ. So, but that is what is actually clinically driven. So liquid biopsies are gearing up very rapidly, where you need a non-invasive systems component. Say, for example, you can take a blood of a cancer patient and establish staging for metastasis far superior, because you are talking about the heterogeneity in a cancer, and the spread of a cancer begins from primary cancer tumor site to the secondary site, that's a metastasis. And as I mentioned, 90% of the patient die because of a metastasis, not because of the primary cancer. So only 10% patients will succumb on a primary cancer, but the focus largely is at the primary cancers. The treatment is focused at the primary cancers, ignoring the patient is transforming from the primary cancer into the secondary cancers. So liquid biopsies, including taking a blood and accounting the tumor cells, which actually disseminate from the primary tumor site from one organ, at the same time of forming the tumor at that local region, when it is actually extending, when it is becoming bulkier, few of the cancer cells from that part falls off at the site, and these cells come in the peripheral blood in a circulatory system. So they are called as circulatory tumor cells. And these cells, without letting know the patient or the person, actually transforms into other substrate organs. And they are undetectable, because our CT PET scan limit in establishing the primary tumor before the treatment and staging has a limitation of a sensitivity, which is about, say, 5 to 7 millimeter. And 5 to 7 millimeter of a tumor caters trillions of cancer cells. And remember, 1 gram of a tumor at the primary site can shed off almost 1 million cancer cells per day. So you have fugitives which are actually running in the circulatory system. So our technology actually detects these fugitives in the form of circulating tumor cells very rapidly over to the technology which is currently available in US and other parts. So we are only the first company in India to get a medical device license in cancer diagnostics for circulating tumor cells detection, isolation, enumeration, which actually has an objective to understand the process of metastasis at very early stage, because that's a key component to increase survival. Second, it can see whether the patient is responding to the treatment or not. Currently, the treatment response is looked at, again, CT PET scan and the size of a tumor, but that is at a local region, and that organ continues to shed the tumor cells. So more the number of circulating tumor cells, if there are 5 tumor cells per ml of a patient blood, it indicates short survival, which is about, say, 15 to 18 months for the epithelial cancers. So it actually sees it predicts the overall survival. It it finds out whether the patient is responding for the treatment or not. And finally, when the patient is we call it as a cure. So there is no cure in the cancer. There is an absence of a tumor, we'll call it as a cure. But if there are tumor cells in circulating, actually that would be called as a cure. And that is what is impossible to find out by any materials in science, because the abundance of this circulating tumor cell is 1 CTC per billion of other blood cells. We are trying to find out a needle in a haystack. So thankfully, 2004 US, there was one technology which was approved, which was exorbitant costly, $2,600, and it was an unmet need in India. That's why actually we began our journey in this technology forum, where we would fail by 99% for sure. With the help of Department of Biotechnology's funding from taxpayers, we started our company in goal of actually becoming more specific and more efficient technology in detecting these tumor cells against the technology which is actually not against, in the comparative with actually water. But I must say that we are the world's second company to have a regulatory approval. And if you remember, WHO's objective and mission and goals is to make anything accessible and available and affordable. So we have made it accessible, affordable, and available. So mechanism is based on an antibody, which is a gold standard for isolating these tumor cells from the epithelial cancers, including lung, breast, head and neck cancers, prostate, etc., etc. So 80% of the cancers are from the epithelial origin. And mechanism is based on the antibody, which is a gold standard, which is called as an anti-EpCAM, that is an epithelial cell adhesion antibody. So that is what is actually hooked onto our materials, which actually interacts very specifically to the cancer cells. And we pull off these cancer cells by immunomagnetic system and enrich on an atomized fluorescent microscopes, which runs the samples, hundreds of samples in a robotic fashion. And the turnaround time for our results is very short, about 2 days versus about 10 to 12 days. Yesterday I had a meeting with Dubai group of hospital, and they were surprised that they typically take 14 to 16 days for the turnaround report. Here we do in few hours once we get a blood sample. So that's a mechanism, and that's an insights of OncoDiscover technology.
Yeah, it is only a few ml. I read 5 ml or as little as 5 ml of blood.
We need only 1.5 ml of blood over 7.5 ml. So, you know, the cancer patient's blood is very precious, and they have lost the weight, and their veins don't allow to withdraw the blood. So we also evolve and reduce the amount of blood that actually will go down. And we will also be able to do the genetics and other mutations using these tumor cells in a short while, which is ongoing process now.
You have come up with a drug delivery system that specifically targets ligands for cancer cells and also a gastroretentive yet pulsatile novel drug delivery system. So could you tell us about the characteristics of these two or any other DDS that you are working on?
So see, the targeted therapeutics using pegylation systems or liposome systems are there already in the market. What is not there is actually you need to have an antibody system, and it requires millions of $1 and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 study. That is what is my fundamental academic background, and more than 75 papers we have recently published. So that fate is as an extension of drug discovery. So we are today is the 2nd December. In fact, on 1st of December, we have now entered into this therapeutic zone with a funding from a international industries funding. So we have just begun our thought process in bringing targeted drug therapeutics from yesterday onwards. I'm very glad that we have got now great startup funds from international company, and this is again a very high risk. I will say that about 50% chance of failure are there. But you asked me a question of a fundamental background. Yes, this is a fundamental background, but the money is coming after the translating of other non-fundamental background technologies. So targeted drug delivery systems are going to be the next third generation cancer therapeutics. So the first is your free form of a drug like doxorubicin, paclitaxel. You have a class of platinates over there, for example. So they are wonderful drugs which are established, but they are not highly efficient. They are not targeted. Therefore, second line of a treatment using these drugs was drug delivery systems like liposomes, which came in 1995. Then 2005, there was another paclitaxel drug delivery systems were made. And the next one is that can you target this therapy to the specific cancer cells, which has been always an academic thought process. And I'm very happy that we will be pioneer, at least from the Indian side, to actually take antibody based systems in our clinical studies. I hope in 2 years, 3 years of a time from now. Drug delivery systems which are novel, we are very glad to say that we develop a technology which can deliver a drug to colon. In US and Europe, about 60 to 70% of population has intestinal ball disease or syndromes because of food habits and because of gastric retention, extended gastric retentions, etc. So the inflammation of bowel is very, very, therapeutics has not been addressed well because you need to carry a drug from stomach to intestine to colon. So this fate is about 6 to 8 hours. And there are no drug delivery system which can sustain 6 hours of very vigorous acidic and alkaline pH. And therefore, there are some technologies that have been produced with great difficulty and not meeting what is actually being desired. So we started our program in this kind of a thought process where we would make a capsules from a very ordinary available material, which will have a very delayed extended release profile. And Government of India, again, Department of Biotechnology funded us for last 4 or 5 years. And I'm very glad that we just completed post-COVID, maybe in October, I think August end and October beginning, we finish India's first novel drug delivery system, human studies. And with a very profound outcome, another international company has actually come forward to take up this technology for a manufacturing that country. But it will take at least 2 years from now to actually come in a clinic. So travel path about 7 years and funding about, say, spending about almost 1 crore rupees. And then that next company will have to spend maybe $5 million to bring in manufacturing. So the materials, the starting material has almost no cost. It's almost a 0 rupees material. But see the eventuality, the pathway of actually transforming any technology is very, very high and extensive. So this is what we do in NDDS. We have several other projects which are in the NDDS, which are now supported by UK-based companies and other local inventors. So we have a pipeline of about 6 NDDS technologies, and we have filed already two patents. We have out-licensed 1 technology to Indian pharmaceutical company, which is in the sustained release in making a diabetic drugs tablets in a smaller size by 25% and increasing the production of tons in 24 hours versus 10 days or so. So reduction of a process, reduction of a size, reduction of an excipient dumping, and overall clinical benefit in the form of a patient compliance. So our one arm is actually in an NDDS system, and I'm sure we do patents which are very novel, and they will be out licensed to the companies. So that's real interesting translation from the pharmaceutical sciences we do. Next.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be glad to see all the 6 or 7 NDDS that you mentioned in the future. I had gone through several articles and papers of yours to take your interview, and I realized that you have used polymer protection for drugs and products a lot. You've concentrated your work on that, with a lot of work on dendrimer and TEG as well. So what are the pros of these polymer conjugates? How did they help in drug delivery?
If I would ask questions to my own research, I would not have done as good as you have done actually. So, so how we use a delivery carrier systems like, see, polyethylene glycol is FDA approved only material which can be injected in a blood. So our focus in an academic research is never an NDDS. I have not published a single paper in NDDS scientific paper, but we have filed several patents. That's the applied science what we do. But in a fundamental polymeric delivery systems, which is for a systemically deliverable drugs, mainly say anti-cancer drugs, was say post 2000 and nanotechnology we heard about it was predominantly in delivering drugs using old polymer, which is FDA polymer, PEG, polyethylene glycol, and there are about 12 to 15 polyethylene glycol and the liposome based formulations which are in the clinic. However, they were looking, because polyethylene glycol is a linear polymer. It's an extensive water soluble, so it has its own physicochemical advantages. But it has a chemistry based drawback that you can hook only one drug. So in cancer therapy, you need high payload of a drugs to be delivered at a cellular level, at the cytoplasm or nuclear sites. So dendrimers was a catchy polymer, hyperbranch polymer when I went for a postdoc. And there were exceptional NIH grants for using this material as a nanopolymer in taking high payload of a drug using variety of a chemistry that we built in into groups. So however, these dendrimers, which were new form of a nano polymer, hyperbranch polymer, with a very small size, about say 1 to 3 nanometers, was expected to do a better job. But multiple clinical trials were begun and they were pulled off because most of them used actually dendrimers, which are branch in generation 4, possesses exceptionally high cationic groups charge. So we need ideally a polymers which would be water soluble, which would offer a chemistry, which would offer a biocompatibility that includes the lower zeta potential and charge, etc. So there are learning lessons that not everything great scientifically would work in human body. So you have to consider that the pathway has to be safer for companies. So some of the pioneers, they are still working on a dendrimer. I know one of a clinical trial that was to begin by Johns Hopkins, one of my advisor, Professor Kanan, not in cancer. So initially for 15 years, I think he worked in a cancer dendrimer delivery system. But at Hopkins, he is actually predominantly focusing work in neurological disorders. So, and he's taking this dendrimer into the human trial, or he might already begin it. So there will be some news from the dendrimer side also making, so it's a chemist job, polymer chemist job, to make a safer biocompatible architectures of polymers. And that class of intellectuals is very, very small in the world, which biologists are depend upon. So the transformations and translations are very, very shaky when actually chemists and biologists do not work together. And chemists design the materials which they are fancied about. Making a complex designs is their goals. However, in therapeutics, there is a line which is a very thin for safety and efficacy. And I think now there are high throughputs to find out which polymers goes. But we do not have great candidates to deliver drugs other than PEG, PLGA, or dendrimer is not yet proved that, but we have limitations only with few polymers currently in the world.
Yes, okay. What are your views on the rapidly growing field of nanomedicine and nanotherapeutics? Because you've done work in that field as well.
See, nanotherapeutics, everything that what we inject in a blood, whether it is a solution state which possesses a solute, right, including your glucose or sodium chloride and all large volume parentals, what we inject is in the form of a nanomaterial. That nano word was defined because we were capable of examining the size of the materials, which was not the case until 2000 or late 1990s. So nanotherapeutics is a combination of using these materials in the size which is actually below, say 60 nanometers or 80 nanometers. It depends upon what is your conjugated form of a drug, what is your actually form of an delivery system. So I will very quickly say that when you use a polyethylene glycol, it's an it's a linear polymer, and it looks like a protein molecule. So its radius of gyration would be limited in a higher size. Whereas if you use dendrimer, always your size of the material will be in the nano size. So you call it as a nanotherapeutics. If you make a PLGA based nanoparticles, they are also driven by our pharmacokinetics and dynamics. So what body does to these particles, we know now that the smaller the size is, the better for the system. So the immunological responses are also not triggered. So we know that the size has to be small. So if you have a small size, you might have a bigger implication. I think that is what is being predicted. But the translations in nanotherapeutics are still not at the level which were anticipated. So, but in there is always, new technologies needs immense regulatory pathways and descriptions, and it involves not only your ideas and concepts on the papers and your publications, but it needs almost $1 billion for taking forward. And only the small mid-scale companies abroad actually takes this nanotherapeutics on the higher side. So you call it as a micro or nano, it doesn't matter as long as your clinical pathway and your PKPD is exceptionally suitable. And there are examples when the frugal innovations in nanotherapeutics translations have begun from the academics, like liposome was from an academic thought. Polyethylene glycol as an academic path. The companies have gone almost to the valuation of $1 billion now. So the academician professors had actually built the concepts, and later on they have actually translated through the help of industry. So it's difficult. As if you ask me a question which might be in your list, is that what you see in Indian translation in these areas. So I must say in advance, I think we are not focusing to those kind of translations, because we are still at the very basic fundamental capacity of handling these kind of materials in our labs through researchers like you, and they are very difficult to actually take forward. But worldwide, yes, I think the innovators are very expressive, and they are very deliberate, and they are very aggressive, because the translations needs efforts. They need a lot of patience, and we know the examples, and in future, because of our systems, clarity, regulations, pathway, more therapeutics are on the verge.
So it is like we have the fundamentals in place, but there are still a lot of external factors that still need to contribute for
Yes.
the actual large scale manufacturing.
So this Bombay Technologies group must understand this. So few of the population minds from this group probably should keep a focus for your 10 to 12 years ahead what you want to do, and what your peers have actually been able to do. You need to learn from them, but you should also understand what to de-learn from them. Unlearning is also important, and otherwise you are in the twister over there. You are in your own, you are moving not forward, but you are actually moving in a spherical directions or in a circular direction. So at a very so that kind of an education and thought process probably lacked in our educational systems. At least as far as I understand, those kind of visions were not there. Our visions were to develop few formulations for the pharmaceutical companies, which was needed 30 years back in NDDS. So I'm part of NKM Kundanani College of Pharmacy in Mumbai, or UD I used to come several times. So I know that there are small changes, not incremental changes. You need an elephant to move the wall, not small other animals. Those elephants, I think we need to create, generate, uh, and the fear, and I think we're not great ambitious. Academicians have not, I'm an academician, so I'm counting, I'm not been able to create a next generation of ambitious students. So that would be my failure if that next generation doesn't come. And overseas, I mean, I'm not fancied about overseas, but the culture of that barrier of crossing your IPS, your guides is the ultimate goal of any professor, that his student should be better than him or her. And that philosophy, I think we need to build. And I'm sure that that's happening through this Bombay Technologies Group, for sure. If not at my place, but at your place, it's fine.
We'll try our best for that, sir. Could you tell us a little about the projects that are under the pipeline?
Uh, uh, that's a great question, and as you said, that I'm very happy to say that the first technology in cancer diagnostics as a medical device approved in India is making a great wave internationally. So we have now outlicensed this technology to an Canadian company for the Europe market. We do get now samples from Cyprus, Canada, Bangladesh. We are talking with Thailand. We are talking to now Dubai. So one set of technological challenge, we are happy that we escaped to the level. Now there is another challenge of making a technology available whole up in India. Now we do get samples from even Kashmir Institute, AIMS, Tata, and many other hospitals. So we have reached to the masses, especially in the cancer diagnostics currently, and at a very affordable cost or sometimes free of cost. Now the next challenge, what is with us is this is a diagnostics in terms of isolating tumor cells. We filed one patent on October 12th, which is an US patent. So we have formed a company in Los Angeles. Now the scope of this Los Angeles company is to actually filter the circulating tumor cell like a dialysis and send back the cancer patient's blood back to the person. So if you remove these culprits, which are the physitives, which are spreading the cancer, they need to be trapped outside the body, filtered like what you do in dialysis of uremic salts or uric salts, right? So therefore, the extension of life is higher. And remember, in cancer treatment, the only objective is to enhance the survival time, enhance the overall survival of a patient, progression-free survival. That is only objective, because you cannot you cannot extend a normal life in cancer patient, because we say what goes around comes around. Therefore, there are relapse, and there are no technologies to find out the relapse. So our OncoDiscover actually is useful in identifying the relapse possibility far earlier than the other technology. So the next technology, what we are enriching in US and in India, actually we are filling a form to DCGI for manufacturing of this material in this week of a time, maybe today or tomorrow, is to capture the circulating tumor cell outside the body through the filtration process and send back the blood to the cancer patient by removing as much as circulating tumor cell. And trust me, this requires about $150 million funding. We are talking about 1,000 crore rupees for this. But in India, we could make this first technology with $1 million. So we still call it as a frugal. So last month, we became 100 crore valuation company, by the way. So we got now 3% equity sold already for 3 crore rupees. So now this is a financial game, because you need to survive in a market, and there is as say this cancer management and transformation is very, very challenging, because cancer diagnostics as therapies are very, very exorbitantly expensive. And that there is a philosophy of big companies, how they manage the costing. So we have been able to keep the technologies low cost, because it is in our control. The next technology, which is in US pipeline as well as India as a secondary side, will require 10 million Series A funding. So we have collected $1 million funding there now for the research that we are doing for last 3 years. After filing a patent, we are expecting $10 million funding. And stage B funding, we look for $40 to $50 million, and the last funding would be about $40 to $50 million for the clinical studies. So 4 years from now, if we get about $100 million plus, this technology might come. But I'm very glad and very humbled to say that we are only whole world to work in this technology therapeutics foray. So we are working on genetics, we are working on therapeutics, post diagnostics. That's what is in our pipeline.
So it is a Herculean task yet to complete.
Life is
It will
life is like that, Gayatri. The easiest is actually Zoom meetings nowadays.
definitely. um, Question: as an integral part of a novel R&D company and a pharmacy professor, you are an inspiration to all of those who wish to place foot in the field of research. Could you give us a little advice for aspirants like us?
My advice is not to give an advice. You follow your dreams. You find your destiny. And I would only advise that do not stop at your bachelor's or master's or PhD levels, because more you enrich academic research, which is never going to be sufficient. So I think you need to move to the places with higher degrees, with higher network of advisors and friends and people who understand technologies as well as science. So, and remember, this generation of you and Rushad and other students now, you are going to translate incremental innovations. If at all you are going to do, it will be say 10 plus year, 20 plus year, 40 plus year. So remember, the tools that what we have today are going to limit your abilities 20 years from now. If your expertise of only the technologies now, science of now, you are not in a race. So therefore, keep yourself to be ready in both this kind of frontline. You cannot be an innovator if you find an innovator product which will sell and you can make a market huge. That's not an incremental. So you're adding another product which is not an unmet need. So it is your philosophy what you want to do it, right? Building companies. There are hundreds of great companies in Pune itself in NCL Venture Center. If you visit, you need to actually read what is happening worldwide, then in India, then incubation centers like NCL and KIT, in IIT Bombay, and then Delhi, and then Bangalore. So you keep on reading what people are doing and try to find out what you want to do it. But my advice for incremental innovations is not to start unless you are thorough for 10, 15, 20 years with an experiences. And the most important is actually not the finance is not a limit, because if you have a great idea, there are great fundings that are available. However, these great ideas needs great teams, great networks, great cooperation and coordination, and understanding much of a regulatory pathways, devices rules, ISO guidelines. Day before yesterday, we finished our ISO 13485 from British agency. So scientists, they are not they're not comfortable to have this kind of an guidelines path, right? So it's very, so you need to be an open minded to understand everything. So that's my take in the audacity of a time is you be with keep high aspirations, but high aspirations, high dreams need a long journey of a research and science, and multiple institutes, multiple countries, multiple doctors, hospitals, scientists together, and that is what is going to change the world.
Follow your dreams and turn them into reality, and we'll work hard to turn reality. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out for us. You provided us with really wonderful insights, and I'm sure it will inspire our readers to take up the field of research and to explore what all it has to offer. The passion that you have for your profession, which is clearly seen with the way you speak, is truly influential. From BT, I'd like to wish you all the best for all the future endeavors that you talked about, as you have so many success stories yet to tell. Thank you so much.
Pleasure and privilege, Gayatri and Rushad and BTR. And My special thanks to Professor Anand Kapti, who probably considered me suitable for this BTR component. I wish all the best to ICT fraternity, faculty, my few professor friends over there, Professor Patravale, Dr. Wavia, etc. And all the best to all the students. Take care and hope to see you sometime in ICT.
Definitely, sir. We would love to see you there.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rishi.
Thank you, sir.